Thanks for logging on to Storytelling with Eth-No-Tec. We'll be streaming soon, so hang in there. We'll be with you shortly. This upcoming stream is free, and we welcome any donations you'd like to contribute to Eth-No-Tec, a nonprofit arts organization. For your support helps us reach tens of thousands of families across the country and beyond, both on the stage and online streaming. While you're waiting for the stream to start, enjoy seeing the many faces and places of Eth-No-Tec and the communities we serve. Your good word helps us reach more people with storytelling that touches hearts and opens minds. We'll be with you shortly. Join Eth-No-Tec in staying safe, sanitize, and put your mask to the task. Pass along this message and pass along this link. Please subscribe to Eth-No-Tec's YouTube channel, Storytelling with Eth-No-Tec. We'll be streaming very soon. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Storytelling with Eth-No-Tec. I'm your host, Robert Kikuchi-Yngojo, and along with my wife, my life partner, Nancy Wong's not here, but she'll be joining us later on in the fall series. So in the meantime, I'm the guy, and this is you, and this is the show, Storytelling with Eth-No-Tec, here in the summer. So, for those of you who don't know who Eth-No-Tec is, because some of you may not have seen us on stage, basically, we are storytellers that move and act and tell stories. We add music to it, and we perform all throughout the United States and international project as well. And we've been doing this for 42 years plus in schools and libraries and correctional facilities, festivals, universities, you name it, we've done it. You can also see us on YouTube. Look for Storytelling with Eth-No-Tec. Well, getting back to summertime. Hope you're enjoying it. Barbecues, jumping in the lake, swimming, going to some events in the public. Maybe some of you like to wade in a stream to keep cool. I know it's getting pretty hot out there. Well, I like that idea of a stream because it's a journey. It's a flow. And every once in a while, you might feel something under your toes and you pick it up and a beautiful shiny stone. Oh, polish it up. Wouldn't that be nice if it was a gem or a diamond or a ruby? Well, just like in life, there are many gems and jewels in our lives and in the people and friends and communities we meet. So this time I'd like to share with you some gems of friends and jewels of memories, shining and reflecting and illuminating our journey, our gems. In fact, a few years back, we had a program, Eth-No-Tec Storytelling Theaters apprenticeship program. It's still running, but one memory, of course, is a few years back we auditioned and had many auditioners, and we chose a fine selection of performers, musicians, dancers, theater people, and we turned them on to the art of kinetic storytelling. Well, we rehearsed for a few years, performed in many places, and of course, many of these young people have moved on. But there was one who has still remained our friend, and that's Yuxi Liu. And we had a chance to, she actually came to visit us here in our summer retreat, and so I'd like to share with you an interview. Here it is. Yuxi Liu, who was part of our ensemble that we had several years ago, and she was memorable, she was joyful, and a responsible artist. That's very important. Always kept her agreements and showed up on time. She's here visiting our studio, and we asked her a few questions, and thank you for being on this show.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so winding it way back, how did you come around to discover Eth-No-Tec Kinetic Story Theater, and what drew you to what we do?
Yeah, so I still remember this day. In 2015, May, there was a board match event in San Francisco where local nonprofits all came together in this one big hall looking for board members. And I was new to San Francisco. I was really too young to be a board member anywhere, but I just was curious about what mission-driven nonprofits there were in San Francisco. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw Robert and Nancy just very lively, like compared to other booths where everyone was just standing there with information booths. Robert and Nancy were kind of dancing with each other. There's like a lot of dynamics, there were a lot of movements, and there's a lot of laughter, and that really drew me to come check out. And that's how I first met Eth-No-Tec. And I kind of just asked about what is storytelling, what is kinetic storytelling, what are Asian folk tales. And once I learned about the mission of Eth-No-Tec as introducing Asian folk tales to the world and inspiring all generations to appreciate folk tales, I was really interested. And I have been learning hip-hop dance since being a teenager, and always wanted to find a way to connect with my body more. And so when I heard this kinetic storytelling, I was even more hooked. And so that's how I came to join the apprenticeship program.
Yep, she had joined what we call NTAP, the Eth-No-Tec Apprenticeship Program. And there were several others, very talented young people. And now, given that you devoted your heart and soul to this, what were some of your fondest moments of being part of the apprenticeship program?
There were a lot of fond memories. For one, we had the opportunity to come to Orcas Island, the beautiful island where Robert and Nancy have their studio, where we're speaking to you from today, and being able to perform for people here, kind of in a local, both like a local theater, but also in the backyard. I remember it was like all the people gathered. It felt like such a special community. That was early on in my time with Eth-No-Tec, and I remember a year later, there was a very memorable moment because we performed a Filipino folktale where I got to play the role of a princess. It was very fun to play the role of princess, considering my other roles have included a rat in a zodiac story. And I remember after the performance, a little girl with her dad came up to me, and the little girl wanted to hug me because she wanted to hug an Asian princess. And that was so special to me because I felt, like representation is important, and I got to play that role, like maybe this little girl didn't see a lot on television, and it really warmed my heart.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
So you got to get on stage, you got to rehearse for it. So with regards to performance, of all kinds, hip-hop or storytelling, what insights or realizations do you have or have experienced about being a creative person?
Being a creative person, I think part of the insight is you never know where inspiration could come from. And for me, I really cherish the time being surrounded by creative people during the Eth-No-Tec apprenticeship program, because each one of us comes from such a different walk of life. We come with different natural talents and interests. I mean, Asha was a musician, and like Radhika was like had more theater background, and I had the hip hop background. I just felt like being around other people who are also creative gave me more permission to be creative, to be more of myself and not hold back. I think my favorite my favorite exercise we did as apprentices was we would warm up by just like moving our body. Just any kind of movement and make sounds. Robert is the master of making all kinds of onomatopoeia sounds, and we would just make them, and who knows, like sometimes like a little skit would just come out of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
All the variety of sounds, all the variety of people. And with that variety, working with other artists, of course, it's under the theme of teamwork. So what was learned by working with an ensemble? What are some of the values in terms of, social dynamics or management carried on into other parts of your career?
I think there are two big lessons. One is you're really only as good as the whole ensemble is. So I think I remember one part of the story where we were singing together, and I have a higher pitched voice, and I just remember thinking, because I have a higher pitched voice, I should really sing loud. Like I should really because I should really let it come through. But then I remember through the rehearsals, like actually it was too much. It didn't fit well with the harmony. And what's the best result was when we all really played to each other. We had to care about the ensemble. It's not just about making our unique strengths shine. And that carries so much into my day-to-day teamwork. It's never about I need to make sure my part is the best. It's about like we all have different strengths. How can we come together, complement each other, and make sure that what we create together at the end is the best possible.
So, and along that line, because we didn't open up with this. Tell me what you do now. What is your livelihood, your avocation? How are you applying all these skills you had when you were with Eth-No-Tec, and how does that play out now in the work you do? What is the work you do now?
Wow, there's a lot of overlap. Maybe it's a surprise when I share it. I am a UX researcher. I work for a education technology company based in the Bay Area called Coursera. We offer online learning, and as the UX researcher, I am kind of like the journalist on the product team. So I interview and get to know our users and really weave together storytelling about the people who use our product in order to inspire and inform our team what to build in order to better meet people's needs. And it's very collaborative. There's a lot of teamwork. There's a lot of getting everybody aligned to come on board with you. And so throughout my work process, there's different types of communication. Sometimes it's like a brainstorm session. Sometimes it's a big presentation. It's really kind of staying attuned to where the team is in terms of understanding and bring everybody along. Everybody has to move together. And also, in order to help people empathize with our users, I use a lot of storytelling techniques, thinking about, what stories will make, what would be memorable? What is like a framework that can really stick with people? What is like a story I can share to really touch people's hearts? Yeah, so it's like logic and also pathos all combined together.
Nice.
The only missing piece right now, I would say, from Eth-No-Tec is the connected part, because I do everything on Zoom. I haven't gotten too much opportunity to actually act anything out.
Well, at the heart of it is this. So you connect, even if it's coming through a little square. You can't help but connect. So in that, with teaching and advocating for knowledge, information, cultural knowledge, community, in your own words, how would you encourage next generation or others to be involved with Eth-No-Tec, performing artists, cultural activists, creatives, volunteers? How would you encourage them, and why? Why should they get involved with Eth-No-Tec?
Well, I would say number one, come watch Eth-No-Tec shows wherever you can. They are on YouTube, Vimeo, maybe in your community. Follow Robert and Nancy. Because I think for me, I learned not just about interpersonal skills and artistic skills, I learned so much about Asian American history in America. And so much of that Asian American history is not taught in schools, but it truly helps me understand my heritage and kind of how we got to where we are today. And it's very important to appreciate that. So I think for young people, come with a curiosity to not only just appreciate the art, to learn about the culture, but also understand a little bit of that history of how we came to be, and appreciate the hardships that a lot of our ancestors went through when the early generations of Asian immigrants in America, in order for us to flourish more today. And then for, like people who are wishing for a little closer connection with your heritage, or you're curious and you don't share Asian heritage, but you're curious about, the richness of all the different Asian cultures, Filipino, Indian, Chinese, Korean, Japanese. There's all these different folk tales. But if you listen to enough, you can also maybe start to see some of the common threads. There's a lot of universal human truths, and that's very delightful to discover for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, certainly to all this issue, at the heart of it all, connecting with people, culture, traditions, community. I must say, and this is my applause to Miss Yuxi Liu, is that she really embodies what we stand for, which is about joy. And whether it be performing in the arts, with storytelling, one thing that really drew us to her was her light and her joy. And so I would maybe like to sign off on that. No matter what you're doing out there in the world, whether it's in healthcare or in law or with the arts or being a gardener or raising a family, we always have to remember this, especially in times like now when people feel so alienated or fearful. That's the power of joy. We need to have more of that to keep our world healthy. So thank you, Yuxi, for being on our life. Yes.
Oh, applaud. Thank you for being
Give her
part
a round
of
of
my
applause
life.
out there.
Oh, thank you for watching.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Wonderful words from Yuxi Liu. And of course, when she came up here, she didn't come by herself. She brought a bevy of wonderful ladies, beautiful people, creative and talented. And here's some pictures of her, people that she works with. They're youthful, they're energetic. And by the way, if you're one of those kind of folks and you want to be a part of Eth-No-Tec, we are looking for people to be a part of our greater circle, to support our work in kinetic story theater in the community. Looking for volunteers, board members, interns you can study with or help us with our technical needs. Along this journey, we've encountered other gems, other professional storytellers, like this next one. Someone who we love dearly. We've been on the stages together in national storytelling festivals and events, and I had an opportunity to interview her. So, introducing one of our dear friends and an amazing storyteller, Judith Black. She's been on many projects with us. Many times she's come to our salon. She's been in our salon series. The trips to China with us, and just exploring the world of storytelling across borders, and just really want to welcome her to our summer retreat. So, but there's more to the who, what, where, when, why about Judith Black. So let's start with you, Judith Black. How in the world did you discover the art of storytelling?
I was a preschool teacher. And we did a lot of cooking because I like to eat. So, I put the recipes up. And of course, we were always learning Piagetian and pre-operational learning skills. They were learning sequencing and measure. It was. And then as the food was either cooling or cooking, I would make up these stories about the giant kitchen. And we would do in the giant kitchen exactly what we did in our kitchen, only everything was
giant.
God, you're quick. And so the problems that came with everything being supersized, like they'd have to climb up the side of the honey and stick a thing in. So they'd have to cooperate. And then there'd always be one problem, like some kid would actually fall into the honey or the pizza crust would fall on us. And then they would jam away to get out of it. And then we would end the story and they would sneak back home to their houses and climb in bed as the morning alarm rang. Never thought anything about it. Not a thing. there must have been dozens and dozens of them. And at this project, there were home visits. And we'd go into someone's home, and Gabe would say, tell the giant kitchen story. I go, good God, which one, Gabe? The one where Amanda and I are cutting the big loaf of bread with the saw. And that's when I got it, that these stories meant much more to the kids than it did. I was thinking pre-concrete operational learning skills, but it went much deeper. And it made them the heroes and heroines of their world. And that's when it went, bing.
Oh,
this stuff's important.
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
And you've been in many different art forms. You have a background in theater, musical theater. She loves to sing. Sometime we're going to, not this visit, but we've got to sing together sometime again. So with your experience on stage and the different forms you've done, you've come to a place where you know what is the difference between theater and storytelling. Why are they different?
Oh my God, it's huge. For one thing, if you're an actor, you have to play what you look like, usually. I mean, theater's starting to expand a little now, where people of color can play any role as long as color isn't the theme of the show. And you think, thank goodness it's opened up. But it used to be, there were 3 roles you could play.
Right.
I could play Golda. That was it. Okay, Golda, and the comic sidekick in something. So that's very limiting. But also, in a story, you get to identify with every character. You're the evil one, and you're the hero, and you're the heroine, and you get to explore all your own parts, and there's no fourth wall. So you're not working something that's preset and is the same every night. You're responding to who's out there and what they need. Whoa. The world. It's the sky. The sky is falling.
Run!
So you get to respond to people's needs. And it is a vital art form. So much more vital than others because it happens in the present.
Right. And engaging with an audience and actually reading the audience and like riding the throttle of emotions. You drive it forward or pull it back and pause. It's really... that's one thing that we also notice,
right.
The magic of that. So in all the different settings, and she's done a lot of different settings, libraries, schools, correctional facilities.
Oh, God, yes.
So with that full range, and also the national stage performances at the National Storytelling Festival in Jonesboro, Tennessee. Out of all those different types of environments, and even getting into communities where you've done some intimate performances, what would you say would be one of the memorable highlights of or unusual experiences on the stage?
Okay. We're looking at a 50-year career. That's a big...
That's all.
Okay, 2 pop up. One, I'm telling a story called How the Moon Got in the Sky. And it's a Papa Anansi tale. And it's at this huge school at a military installation. And there's one girl, and she's in a... You could see, it was enormous birth defects. She's in a chair and she's sitting kind of like this and her legs are up and she can't really control her facial muscles. But the people told me that her cognition was fine. And when it came time to pick the children, so one of the things we do in the story is every time a baby is born, and there are a lot of babies, everyone in the house goes, such a pretty baby, So it was time for the 4th baby to be born, and I went over to her and I said, do you want to be a baby? And she went, and I bring her over, and there are 300 kids looking at her, saying, such a pretty baby. And you could just feel something coming off of this child that was so stunning. And you realize you could do that. Another huge moment was actually at the National, and it was a Sunday morning Sacred Tales. Had the stage for the whole hour and told a story that I was commissioned to write for Old South Church in Andover, Massachusetts. It's like the oldest congregational church in the country, but it came from Puritan roots. It had to switch over to keep its population. It's a long story. But it's about those 3 symbols, the table, the book, and the cross, and a young woman who really adhered to them. And she had one sweetheart, and he went to the Andover Theological Seminary, and she was the first missionary from this place. Okay, what did the first missionary from the Andover church do? She went to Canada to try to convert Catholics. This was the era. It was the 1830s. And the man who is writing what we would call love letters, which were like, you cannot blame the people for having published us. And that means put us together. In that same 2-year period, he starts to see her richer cousin, probably prettier, leader. And she comes home and realizes her life is going to be a very lonely one. And she's getting ready at night to escape back up to Canada because she couldn't bear to see the two of them sitting in the front row together. Because in the church, you bought your pews, and the wealthier families, because of course they had a greater connection to God, got to sit in the front. Right. And she thought, I can't do this all my life. So she was going to escape back up to Canada and continue her work, trying to recruit citizens for the soul. But she went through the church. And she let herself just be filled with these things that she loved, the cross and the table and the book. And when she woke up in the morning because she fell asleep on a pew, she could stay there because she had a greater love. And then we sang this gorgeous song that were sung in churches then. So, okay, I'm finished doing this story, and a little girl, she was probably about 11, with blonde hair that curled up right on her cheeks, and she walks up to me and she goes, "Ma'am, I would love to hear your testimony." And I said, "Oh, sweetie, I'm not sure I know what a testimony is. I'm Jewish." Deer in headlights. And she starts to back off. And I say, well, let's say that God is at the top of a mountain. There's so many paths up. You're taking one, I'm taking another. I hope we meet there. Thank you, ma'am. And yeah, amazing things can happen.
Yeah. So when I was growing up, that's my father and my family all talked about it. The mountaintop, God, there's many paths to the mountaintop. Yeah. So on this issue of spirituality, your Jewish background, when you perform for an audience that's with your peeps, right? Give us some insight, like how you notch it up, gear it differently in that environment.
The exact same way you do it when you're working for a Southeast Asian population. You know the culture, so you know the points of self-acknowledgement that you would never do in front of other people. You know, like the kvetchy, the arguing that you'd be embarrassed to show publicly. In culture, it's hysterical. But there, you know, you sort of edit yourself because of how you want to show your people. And I dream of this concert called Warts and Shadows, where we all tell the funkiest stories about our culture.
And
it's okay.
A few pimples, too.
Yes,
Let's
yes.
Pop them.
Warts and shadows. You know, so you show them in-house, but you wish you could show them everywhere so we could see each other's mishegas, which is the Yiddish word for craziness.
Wow. You know, when we were on tour in Alaska, and Southeast Alaska, which has the salmon industry, and of course a long-standing history with Filipino salmon fishery workers being in that community for decades and decades. So they asked us to do a show in Ketchikan, Alaska, and it was a mixed audience of whites and multicultural and Filipino. And so we did one of our favorites, which is Seven Silly Fellows, where we have a call response, and they say "talaga," which means really?
Yeah.
And so it's inserted in there to keep the audience going. Of course, when we... actually, that wasn't the word that got them triggered. It was this other signal called "st, st." You know, it's a signal like, get your attention.
Yeah.
But only if you're Filipino do you know
Right.
"st." So the minute we threw that in, we did "talaga," and they answered, and they started laughing. But the minute we did "st," which is a real in-house, intercultural thing, they just roared with laughter. And of course, the white audience is kind of like, oh.
What's that about? Yeah.
What's that all about? So it's really interesting to do with the mixed audience, but also acknowledging that there are some things that are sort of fine-tuned gems that on the inside people know what that means. Yeah. So years and years, schools, correctional facilities, libraries, you've evolved, and so has your audience evolved. So they're a reflection of how you apply your art form.
Right.
So where are you at now? how has your audience reflect that? What are some of the new things you're doing in your career?
So stories are always about meaning making. You know, shit happens, and then you try to understand why it impacted you in different ways, and hoping that other people will be able to relate to that. But folktales are like that too. You know, you have a folktale that suddenly speaks to you in a way it never did before because you're identifying with it in a different way. So all stories are about making meaning. And the whole first part of and we were so born into a sweet spot. Oh my God. You know, when I started doing this, because it was a combination of storytelling arts and theater and literature and history, school residencies abounded. I mean, there were so many organizations doing them. So we really got to hone our art by sharing stories and workshops thousands of times. And I don't think those are opportunities that people have now. So that's just to acknowledge, thank you, Sweet Spot. We were so lucky.
And thank you all those schools and libraries and correctional facilities that said, hey, what do we need on our in our event here?
Yeah, we need story.
Yeah.
So that was always what I was playing with for every audience. You know, how do you help kids make meaning out of their own fears or out of the things that happen in their life? And then how do the stories I created from the get-go, I mean, there was no like grounding. The stories were always like the Magic Kitchen. I was making them up. And then started to do research on history, aware that the history we got was sanitized. It was usually white male history. And deep commitment to showing that from other vantage points. You know, from everything from the kid who served on the USS Constitution at the age of 11, because they did, to looking at the Second World War from the vantage point of the women who worked in the factories, the Irish, the Jewish, the African-American women, and what they had to face. So that is the joy of storytelling, that you get to look at those different perspectives, which should always be part of history. And now we are coming to the end of human history because of how we've abused resources. And, you know, as a species, we just run towards what looks good, what makes our lives easier, what makes things brighter and shinier and more fun. And then we got there and said, oh shit, we're burning fossil fuels at a rate. We no longer live in 350 parts per million of CO2. We're now at 420, and that's not livable. And we have got to bring that down if there's going to be any kind of livable world for our children and grandchildren.
And as you probably noticed on the news, so fires, heat waves, all that stuff, rising sea levels, you know, get on the horse and start galloping, because whatever you're doing with environmental ecology stuff, sustainability, we all have to crank that one up.
Right. So it's interesting because Robert and I were just talking about someone I met out here who is he does regenerative agriculture, which is absolutely the way to go, because regenerative agriculture builds on the Earth's microbial soil. It sucks in CO2. It's able to hold water. It's just the smartest way to farm that we haven't done, because why? The companies that make fertilizers and pesticides don't make any money.
Yeah.
So it's time to start making these shifts, and that's a big shift, is changing how we deal with the earth around us. The other shift is how we produce our energy. The other shift is how we deal with product, because plastics are a petrochemical product and they are killing us. And the oil company, as it sees its death knell ringing and we're moving to renewable, are pushing plastics because that keeps them alive. So there's so many fronts to work on this, and storytelling can do a lot because it brings people into the heart of an issue instead of just the mind. And once you read the science, once you've read This Changes Everything and The End of Nature, The Sixth Extinction, and all of E.O. Wilson, it leaves you on the couch. You're like freaking comatose.
Yeah, it's a deer in the headlights.
Right. My husband, I go, honey, bring me a catheter. I'm here for the duration, which turns out to be not nearly as long as any of us had hoped.
Yes.
And then you go, is this how we live? This is not how we live. It's what Pandora left in the box. So you come back out fighting and you join a climate organization and you start to use the art that you've developed all your life to spur people on, to educate them, to bring them into the circle of this new reality.
Early in the beginning of this, we talked about this imaginary kitchen. So here you are now, decades later, in your art form, with all the experience you've had, and with all these new concerns or vistas to take a serious look at, the environment, our inner world too, the way the human mind works, and still wanting to serve to our art form. In your imaginary kitchen, in that magical place where we stir, we know the recipe, some of the elements in the recipe, but what's on the menu for you as a cultural activist, a storytelling activist? What's new for you on right now?
So two things, trying to draw people who feel that the climate crisis is something happening outside of their life, to draw them into it in a way that will be generative and not terrifying. Not easy. And then to work with people who are aware. So for instance, my climate organization is 350. And 350.org was started by Bill McGibbon. It's international, but every state has its own chapter. So I'm a 350 mass person. And within it, I want people to see what I don't know the word, but what a seriously important role storytelling can play, both holding people together around issues, looking at future and envisioning future and what it can be and going towards it. Because we tend to be very frontal lobe about this. It's like, I got the facts, and I'm going to do this legislation, and I'm going to make sure that passes, and I'm going to work with corporate responsibility.
And that all plays an important role.
Really important.
Extremely, yeah.
Really important. And I'd like to tell stories about how, yes, that's important. Every resource we use comes from the earth. Every time we suck something up from the earth, something happens to that earth. Yeah. And then as we manufacture it, how does that affect everything around it? As you use it, how does that affect it? And then as it comes to its end use, which never happens for a tree never has end use. Even when it's decaying wood, insects are living in it. It is life.
Continuing, yeah.
But we have death. We have plastics that take hundreds of years to biodegrade.
Yeah. Our immortality is something that sort of we don't want to think about it.
Yeah.
But then if we can do that, why can't we apply that fear of our mortality with the mortality of the planet, the health of the planet, the vitality of the planet?
Yeah.
So I think it's good to wrap this up. But wow, it's the magic recipes, the imagination, storytelling, children, trees, all this stuff. It really, we have to embrace this as an integrity, and I think that's one thing that Western mindset has to not think of it as these separate little veins, but how it's everything.
It's just not an entertainment modality. It has to be entertaining. God knows.
Yeah, grab that heart.
But.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Judith Black. You are a dear to us and a wonderful woman warrior of the word.
Oh, God, yes, I love you guys. Thank you.
Your website is?
storiesalive.com.
All right. Thank you, Judith. Thank you.
And now for something completely different. Ooh. Once upon a time, there was a young man, probably about 27 years old, on his search to finding what is Asian American culture. Well, part of that, the first half of it, what is Asian? Well, it behooved that young man to take a journey to discover his Asian self. Half Japanese, half Filipino, aiming towards the Philippines, he ended up in the archipelago of the Philippines. An island nation of over 7,125 islands and over 103 languages and dialects. Well, his interest as a musician was to go south. And that's where he discovered the music of Kulintang. Kulintang has a story. Once upon another time, long, long ago, a young prince, a chief, a datu, was wandering through the forest when he heard toko, 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 a sound. Well, upon his discovery, he saw Potri Rainalat, a river spirit who was finished swimming and drying her hair in the sun, and she had laid out a row of stones. And with a pair of sticks, she began tapping those stones, making a wonderful sound. Well, so inspired was that Datu chief that he ran back to his villagers and told them what he saw, what he heard. And that's the idea, the inspiration for the bronze gong music of southern Philippines from the island of Mindanao called Kulintang. We definitely are northbound this summer, north to the great land, Alaska. And there we'll be doing 2 days of a cross-cultural camp for adults. That's right, something playful, something music, some dance for the grown-ups in Wasilla, Alaska. Many of you in our audiences may not know of our musical history. Namely, the many years that Nancy and I spent time researching, teaching, and performing in the traditional music and dance of southern Philippines, the Kulintang. The initial interest started off with my research, my journey to the Philippines, and my search for my roots. It was prompted by that question, well, what is the music of the Philippines long before Western contact, before Western colonization and Christianity? Of course, it leads us to the discussion of the ethnic minority groups, which are dozens of different groups. My search led me to the cultures of the Maguindanao, the Maranao, and the people of Tausug, of the southern region. And of course, they're known for their Philippine gong music. And so when I presented my workshop of indigenous Philippine culture, I introduced the dances, the songs, and the music of the gong music, and have the participants, dry their hands at the music and their feet in the dance. Most challenging, of course, is to train them so that they prance gracefully, if not dangerously, between the clapping of the bamboo poles in the traditional dance known as singkil, performed among the Maranao people of the lake. When it's Nancy's turn, she'll be doing a workshop in storytelling theater using her Chinese culture and engaging in folk tales and myths 4 or 5 of them have been selected and overlain with her modern techniques in storytelling theater. And of course, there'll be discussions of how these stories are related to Taoism, Confucianism, and Buddhism. And it'll be a fun way to learn about Chinese culture and have playful theater games as well and perform. Well, by engaging these participants in cultural immersion, this camp, presented by Keys to Life, they'll be creating a better understanding among the participants about diversity, about our American culture, and the richness of the culture through the many peoples that make up the fabric of our society. We'll also be joined by other artists from the milieu of diverse cultures, Faina Kronos from Ukraine, Yari Walker and Kevin Toothaker, First Nations, Alaskan Natives, and also by Shelby Mahogany Wilson, an African-American cultural connector, spoken word artist, and our very own Diane Ferlat from the Bay Area. All of this was organized by the Keys to Life, working with Shirley Staton, and her committee has gathered these artists together to share with the community, and hopefully some downtime too, maybe swimming in the lake, sitting by the fire, fireside chat, roasting a marshmallow or two, and maybe some hot topics as we steam out in the sauna. We'll show you some pictures soon. Well, that's plenty of an earful and an eyeful for today. We'd like to give you a little heads up, though, what's coming up on July 30th, coming up very soon, at the Universal Unitarian Church in Davis. Or is it the Unitarian Universal Church? I think that's it. In Davis, on July 30th at 10:30 in the morning. If you're there in the valley, there in Davis, stop in at the church and you'll see the film Red Altar, the story of early Chinese immigrants in the fishing villages of Monterey, and also how it relates to what's going on currently now with that horrible rise in anti-Asian American hate and crime and violence against our people. So I hope you'll join us next time. Again, my name is Robert Kikuchi-Yngojo, and my wife, she'll be here sometime, Nancy Wong. She'll join us in the fall. But you join us next time around at Storytelling with Eth-No-Tec. Thanks.